This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla, and with me today is Nicole Lazzaro. She's the president and founder of XEO Design, based in Oakland, which is located on the other side of the Bay Area and is now a funky little town. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oakland is a funky little town, huh?
I've been there for quite some time, so it's just getting discovered, and a phenomenal amount of growth in the past couple of years.
And
absolutely.
It's also a tech hub.
Yes, it's an amazing tech hub. I mean, my company XEO Design is about halfway between Pixar and Fenton's Ice Cream Parlor.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff happening in the East Bay, especially in Oakland.
So thank you for coming. So I was looking at this headgear.
Yeah.
This is a VR, virtual reality headset. Mm-hmm. And that's been the talk of the town for the last 12 months, virtual reality headsets. Tell us what got you interested in games.
Great. Well, since the virtual reality, games have always created it. We create these magic circles that we pull players in for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. And, games have been doing this, and so have I. I got really interested in virtual reality because of this thing. In working on games like Myst and The Sims, Star Wars, and The Matrix over a very long career, I realized that virtual reality really is this trip down a rabbit hole to experience Wonderland. And I grew up in Wonderland. I grew up overseas, riding camels, climbing pyramids, exploring fire temples. And
that's in Iran, I'm guessing.
And yeah. And I just want to go back and re-experience that full body wonder I felt as a kid. For those 5 years, my family was overseas. And VR is, with this technology, it's the first game platform that's been able to help me recreate those experiences I had as a child, and bring along all my friends.
So you want to bottle that childhood experience and share it with others?
Yeah, because as adults, as you get older, what happens is that wonder is a very rare emotion. We rarely experience it in our day-to-day life because we kind of got the world figured out.
As adults, we don't.
Huh?
But as adults, we
don't. As adults, we don't.
But as kids, we do.
Right. So then what we can do is we can create a game, though, that creates a magical, mysterious world. And then as an adult, we get to feel that full body wonder we, felt as a child. Which is, why our, first game at XEO Design is Follow the White Rabbit.
So that's why we have the rabbit.
That's why we have the rabbit here.
So what is a rabbit? So Follow the White Rabbit reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. This reminds me Audrey Hepburn in that movie. Breakfast at Tiffany's, with a choker of.
Yeah. Well, what we have with Follow the White Rabbit is it's a game about a magician, not the rabbit. Well, okay, maybe it is about the rabbit. Okay, it's about the rabbit.
Did you want to be a ventriloquist when you were young?
No. I do like puppetry, though. Do I like puppetry? Yeah, I thought so.
Okay, so is it modeled after Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, it's kind of the Alice in Wonderland, meets the Matrix.
Okay.
So it's those two kind of genres fit together, and essentially it's about a magician who's been a charlatan like all his life, until one day his magic actually works, and the rabbit disappears, wearing a priceless diamond bracelet. Borrowed from the audience, and so now everybody wants to follow the White Rabbit. And so we go on an adventure as part of the game through a series of escape rooms from Paris to Egypt, to the Great Wall of China, to Turkey, to Atlantis, all of these places. Well, maybe not Atlantis. I didn't visit that as a child. But everyone else, in my head I did. And you get to, see it in a very new light. It's got this wonderful, it's wonderful sort of Magritte surrealism to both the game mechanic and the environments. And it's an experience you couldn't have any other way. You couldn't even have it in real life, only through this kind of hardware.
So that's the game that you've created?
Right, yes, Follow the White Rabbit.
And that's for a Samsung Gear?
I'm doing it on a on a platform called Unity. So I'm programming it in C#. So I'm actually the coder and the game designer. Brandon Jones is the artist. And we are putting it, here we see it in on Gear VR, Samsung Gear VR. But because it's in Unity, I can also put it out for the Oculus Rift, for the HTC Vive, for the Sony PlayStation, pretty much any VR headset platform that's available at the market, we can put out because I'm writing it in this, with this particular tool.
So Unity is the platform?
Yeah, Unity is an authoring system. So what's really cool now, that hasn't been true, forever, is that game tools now, we call it middleware, is that one or two people can, buy a middleware like Unity or Unreal's another game engine, kind of very similar, and then you can actually create the whole game without having to actually write a whole game engine, which would take, hundreds of, thousands of hours of programming in order to create.
So you write once and render it for different
Exactly, yeah, and it's kind of
gears.
like a toolkit. It's like a software toolkit that allows you to do things like play an animation here, or move the camera in this way, or render these lights. These game engines are really super powerful, and it's an amazing thing for a very small shop, like ours, to be able to take a very small team, like 2 to 4 people, and create an amazing experience.
So is this game available?
This game's still in development now, so what you played and the team all played earlier is really a
beta.
It's a demo. It's a demo, and we're in the middle of talking to partners to get funding to go into production.
Okay, so this is not the first game that you've developed. You had developed the first game for the iPhone too.
Yes, yeah. So I love new tech, and as a woman, it's really great because when you go into the innovation space.
Let me stop you right there.
Sure.
When did you find out about the iPhone? Did you know about it before it was released?
Well, I knew about it before it was released, absolutely. I didn't know it before it was announced, but I'm pretty well known for giving a game industry talk in 2007 before the launch of the iPhone, in which I have a slide up there saying that Apple was going to upend the game industry and become the leading provider of mobile games on this yet to be delivered iPhone. They were going to essentially do with what they did to the music industry with iTunes. They were going to do the same thing with games.
And with the iPod and everything.
Yeah, and then nobody believed me. Maybe except for the guys from Apple that were in the audience, but I think they believe me. So what we did was, like, when the iPhone did, a couple months later, when the iPhone did actually launch, we could actually get our hands on the very first ones. I went to iPhone Dev Camp about a week later, a big hackathon, a development, a game jam we call them now, and met up with Joe Hewitt. And so
Who is he?
So he is an engineer that he actually designed. He went on to design the Facebook app. For the iPhone, the very first one. So he's a programmer, and so what I did is I did the design, he did the programming, and we created a JavaScript game. And this was when the iPhone only had 12 buttons, and there was nothing called an app yet. There was no app store, there was no SDK. So we decided, well, how can we get a game on one of these? Because that's what we wanted to do. So we created a JavaScript game that was called Tilt. And all you did was you rotated the phone from portrait to landscape, matching green one way, blue the other. And it was kind of like a falling Tetris, a colored Tetris kind of idea. And we got 1 million downloads, all free, of course, because there was no store. But we were the top hack of the iPhone by Wired Magazine. We were in Best of Show at the event.
But what prompted you to create a game for the iPhone when you had not even seen the iPhone when you talked that?
Well, what I had, and again going back to innovation, what's really fun is that since there were no barriers, nobody had done anything yet. I clearly saw this was going to be a great gaming platform. Even just what it was. And so I got super inspired. I interviewed people in line waiting for their first iPhone. I followed them home.
Where did you buy the iPhone?
At Emeryville Bay Street.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. On East Bay.
East Bay, right?
Okay.
Yep. I stayed. I was there. Yeah. It was a pretty intense experience. And then I created a game. So I looked at these interviews. Like, what was it really? And this is the same thing with VR as well. Like, in terms of, regardless of the platform, every platform has a different sort of emotion profile. These are emotions that players really enjoy, or that the platform really does well. So VR, curiosity, wonder, and surprise. The iPhone, a lot of wonder, and people really dug, being able to just rotate the phone and watch their email browser and their photos. That was completely new, blew people's minds.
And that was using the accelerometer.
The accelerometer, exactly, exactly.
Were you aware that it was going to be part of the iPhone before it was released?
No, I didn't know before it was released, but I did when it. I just followed people home and I took my cues from what they got the most excited about. So instead of doing a shooter game or one that you could tap on, I used what you could only do, and that was unique and new, and created those things. I mean, there's like nothing more excited than a first-time iPhone owner in that period of time. So we designed this game to be an extension of that. So after you got used to your phone, your email, and all that, you could actually then play a game that created those same emotions you had when the phone was new. We figured that would be a really big hit, and it was. So from there, what we did was we then took, this is a game called Tilt, and it's just a free download, or just a free JavaScript game. We measured the width of the browser to drive the game. And then I created a new game called Tilt World based on that same mechanic.
That's the Helping Madagascar.
Exactly. So that's a game that stars Flip, who is a carbon-eating tadpole that gobbles up carbon and collects seeds to replant the forests. And the goal of the game is to plant, 1 million trees. We've planted about 16,000 trees so far.
Which is not bad.
Not bad, yeah. Yeah, it was our partners WeForest, which we're really happy about.
Considering that it's a game and people are doing it virtually.
Exactly.
So when you finish the game, a tree is planted?
Exactly, yeah. The points that you earn in the game go into a global pool, and those are the points that plant the trees.
Okay,
so the virtual, basically you could virtually plant it here, and then in the real world there's something going on, and that's the power of games, because games are where play is where we invent our future selves. So with an eco game like Tilt World, it empowers people to make a difference, and then after they've played this game, then they will be more likely. We hope that they'll be more likely to do other sort of environmentally conscious things. And thinking about VR now, we've seen several VR experiences that have increased empathy for trees and saving the planet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of those come out.
So let's step back. You've got over 20 years of experience in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
And you specialize in what is known as studying the emotions, the micro emotions in a player's face, and you profile players. And there are certain stages, and there's a spectrum, I would like to say, of stages that players go through, and you say that there are 4 key factors.
Absolutely.
And that is your claim to fame in some ways, because you wrote this in 2004, I want to say. There's 4 keys to fun.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the 4 keys to fun, and then if we fast forward to now, where we are at the cusp of a world where lines are being blurred, AR and VR, when you play a VR game, it is surreal. When I climbed that Mount Everest, I threw the headgear away thinking I was going to tumble down.
Oh, no.
So it is so real, right? And there's one of our team members, he says when he plays VR games, he feels nauseated, even though he's in a room and he's standing upright on a flat surface.
He played our game backstage for quite some time. So,
did he?
Not all VR games are
So your specialty is studying players and their emotions.
Yes, if you think about what it is, I mean, a game is a voluntary experience, and it
is
really
it?
usually it's entertainment, right? It's not like a word processor, which we've also worked on, and photo editing. It's like, you have to do it part of your job. So if you're gonna spend, you'll spend 8 hours or 20 or 40 hours learning the tool, because then it helps you earn your living, right? Games pretty voluntary, and we do them because they're intrinsically motivating, because we enjoy them.
And they're also addictive.
And they are, anything that is enjoyable can become, addictive. And I really say is if you are playing or doing something that you enjoy to the detriment of other aspects of your life, and that's really hurting you, that's when you cross the line, and that's when we pull back. And as designers, we really try and, wear white hats about this. But what we do is that, because it's really about, games are about the internal experience. I coined the term player experience. So it's the feelings that you have inside. And so what I did in leading up to 2004 was I measured emotions on people's faces as they played games. They're called microexpressions. I used the work of Dr. Paul Ekman, who does facial action coding. So we actually coded the players' favorite moments in games.
When you say coded, what do you mean?
I mean that I went and I actually watched people play
two-way mirror?
No, no. I went up to them and I watched them at home, school, and work, young and old, male and female. Everything from Tetris to Call of Duty, from from World of Warcraft to Bejeweled. All kinds of games at home, school, work, everywhere. And what we did was we videotaped them. I videotaped them, had them talk about their experience, as they were playing. So no mirrors involved. I feel it's much more genuine for me to be here, just like we are now, right? I was literally just there.
The reason I asked is because you're a psychology major.
Sure.
So I thought maybe there were mirrors.
Well, if you think if there's a mirror, I mean, we use lots of mirrors in Magic. No, that's something different type of illusion. But players are not, by and large, are not fooled by mirrors, and they're actually made uncomfortable by that experience. And so that's why we really try and be upfront. But what I did was I videotaped them while they played. And then I took those favorite moments in games, and I coded, which meant I marked the video. What kind of emotion was I seeing in their face? So curiosity, disgust, contempt, enjoyment, laughter, anger, all of these different emotions. And there's other emotions in the body. So, wonder, and then fiero, my favorite. It's like one of my favorites anyway. It's like, yes.
That's an Italian word?
Yeah, it's Italian for the pleasure and the triumph over adversity. And it's a great emotion because nobody else has to experience. It's just like, I did it. And in a world where you don't have a lot of effect, where we feel like we're floating and spinning, and it's so complex, the feeling of personal accomplishment, which is what fiero is all about, is amazingly, amazingly powerful. But so I did is I took these favorite moments in games and I organized them by, curiosity and wonder and, frustration leading to fiero and, laughter and love and, all of these things. And I grouped them by emotion. And then from those groups, they broke into there's 4 keys. They broke into 4 different groups. And then from those groups, I then looked at, well, what were the mechanics? What were the actions people were taking? In the games to create those emotions. And
so what were these 4 groups you created?
Yeah, so what we found is that developers, hundreds of thousands of developers around the world use this, and here's kind of where it's at, is that players play games for basically 4 reasons. They play for curiosity, they play for challenge, they play for, the sense of being social, friendship, and they play for meaning, value out of the experience. So it's this, exploration, mastery, social, friendship, and then...
So it's not an isolating experience, playing games?
Actually not. Most gameplay is actually social. If you look at the history of human play, and that goes back to playing, set, or backgammon way back in the Egyptian times, to now, it's often much more often a 2-player or more player experience. And in games, the early history of games is that it was, for the first time, I could actually play a game against the computer instead of having to get a friend over. So we see a lot of single-player games. A lot of single-player games on the iPhone.
But that's not isolating. Is it isolating when you have? I
think more people have more fun when there's other humans involved.
So when there's interaction.
Right. And so if you think about what are the 4 keys? So the first one, it's curiosity. And what's happening in the brain is it's the hook that pulls you in. It gets your attention. These are all different ways of getting attention. And it's exploration, role play, story, all of these things, fantasy, those things all pull us in for curiosity, wonder, and surprise. But then, dribbling a basketball is just fun. It's just fun to do. But then after a while, it's like, well, I really want to have a little bit more here, more structure. So that's when the second key comes in, which is hard fun. And then hard fun's about challenge, it's about mastery. It's about a goal. So that's why the hoop in a basketball is way up high and, really small. Not here as a wastebasket, right? If putting a ball in there is just super tricky.
It's a little bit hard to reach.
It's hard to do, right? So you get frustration and obstacles and a goal. And that's frustration that leads to fiero. You can't actually experience fiero unless you are really frustrated first. In fact, if I'm ready to throw my smartphone through the window right before I win, that's when the arms punch the sky. So when you talked about psychology and game design, there's a lot going on because we want to hit those sweet spots to make the player feel good. So we actually make them feel bad in order for them to experience that overcoming, which is great. So that's hard fun. So it's hard fun. Easy fun, then hard fun. Then social people fun is all about the feelings of friendship and meaning. We see it most often with amusement. It's cooperation, competition, communication, ways that we can collaborate and work together. You get amusement, you get schadenfreude, you get jealousy, you get the feeling of like, it feels better to win, win in social context, right? So you get that admiration from your peers. That's wonderful. Serotonin rush there. So that's people fun. And then the last one is what we call serious fun, and that's really all about learning and creating value. It makes a game feel less like a waste of time. So we have repetition and rhythm, collection and completion games like mechanics like badging, but that's not the only thing. It's really about how the game changes the player or helps the player change the world. So Tilt World plants trees in the real world. Here with Follow the White Rabbit, we're using virtual reality to help them understand themselves and really help them understand other people around the world.
So there's a trinity of emotions that you always talk about: surprise, fear, curiosity. Who nurtured these emotions in you when you were growing up? Was it your dad or your mom?
I would say more than any parent, I think it was more the experiences I had. I had a very free-range childhood, so I was not to be put in any box whatsoever. Very difficult to keep me around.
Did you play hopscotch as a kid?
I did. I was much more though an adventurer. So I would make up my own stories, and I would go off in the corner of the yard. I would be in the we had a swimming pool, so the drain swimming pool, I would be creating my own worlds in chalk, around me, whether they were forests to explore or pyramids or, and then of course when we traveled, we had the luxury of traveling because we were stationed overseas for 5 years. I would sit and just try and imagine, like they had the sound and light show at the pyramids of Giza, and I would just try and imagine what would it look like if I could see those processions, like what were they eating, what kinds of people, if I were talking to them, what kind of songs did they sing? That profound sense of curiosity really led to wonder being my favorite, my absolute favorite emotion, and a huge passion for connecting us all as a planet, because I had so many instances where I could, I encountered the other, and then realized that through a conversation or an experience that we were really all the same.
So your childhood and the fact that you were able to travel nurtured these emotions in you. What then brought you to Stanford from the East Coast? I think you grew up in the East Coast.
So we grew up, we went from Iran to the middle of the country, St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis.
Yeah. So from the Mideast to the Midwest.
Okay.
And it was a very different kind of thing. I spent most of high school like either on my roof or laying on the roof outside my bedroom window. See, I cannot stay inside. Or on the lawn in the backyard, just looking for aliens to, waiting for aliens to come pick me up because I was so bored. So what I did instead was I read the entire, there were summers, I just read the entire science fiction section of the St. Louis Public Library. I just consumed it. And I think that really set me up for being an innovator and being technical, because...
So who inspired you with your parents? Somebody must have said, okay, go and read whatever you want to read.
Well, I think it was just our circumstances. I think my mom is a teacher, and so what we had is we had the ability, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so in terms of entertainment, we wouldn't have a stereo because that'd have records and that sort of thing. We couldn't afford those. We didn't have a computer even because we couldn't afford that. But a library is free. And so, I just read and read and read and read and read. And I loved, developing your education was really emphasized. Both parents really value the education. Because that's what can put you on to something else.
And then you came to Stanford and studied psychology.
Yeah, psychology, filmmaking, and a little bit of programming as well. So I sort of take those things to take myself, the world, my clients to that next level of play. It's really about understanding how we are as humans that I think can really help us refactor who we are, and then both as an artist as well as a technician, we can create these products and services or games that really transform us. Sort of like, I think Shakespeare is really credited for inventing the modern human. with a lot of his work. And I admire so many people that are working in games and in the other arts in the way that they are helping us face some of these enormous challenges we are facing, in the world today, and doing it through our, through our art. There's a going back to my childhood where I was, standing outside Persepolis, we were talking earlier, which is a ruin inside Iran. It was the winter palace of Darius the Great. And I asked the guide, well, what happened? See, I'm always asking why. Why is my favorite question. Why are there no artifacts here? Why is there no big museum? Every place else we've gone, there's always been this big museum. Clearly something. But he said, no, Nicole, what happened is that this other gentleman named Alexander the Great came and conquered Darius and burnt the palace to the ground and then took all the artifacts back with him to Greece. And I thought, wow, I really felt the loss because I really had wanted to see, again, to experience what it was like to be in that palace. Experience that sense of loss, but then coupled with the realization, it's like, we had just had this line. And if I were on one side of the line, it was Alexander that was great. On the other side of the line, it was Darius that was great. And so with that cross-cultural understanding happening at a very young age, I just felt it, just chills went all the way through me. And I realized that there was something that was kind of like what my, my life's mission was to make these, is help people experience that. And that's what we can do in VR, because you feel like you're really, really there.
You're such a compelling storyteller that time just flew by. I literally have 15 seconds. My last question is, what advice would you give to a young person sitting there and watching, and they're interested in games? How can they get into the gaming industry, and what should the skills be? You have less than 10 seconds.
Well, I would say two things. One, learn to code. Code, because if you can make it, you can design it and everything like that. So it can be very simple, whether it's basic or Scratch or whatever. And the second thing is simply read a lot of science fiction, because that helped me get where I am today.
Very, very, good advice. Learn to code and read sci-fi. And we are getting into the world of sci-fi where reality and everything is blurring this line. So
that's where the future comes from, is our imagination. And so by reading science fiction and other kind of exploratory play, you're exercising that imagination, which gives you the tools to innovate. And if you can innovate and be creative, regardless of your profession, you're going to help push the human race forward.
Thank you for taking us down the rabbit hole.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming and talking to us today, Nicole. And thank you for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can watch them on our YouTube channel. We'll be back again with another episode. Until then, goodbye.
This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.